This module is an introduction to the North Carolina History of Education series. The point of this series is not to make you an expert on all things North Carolina. Although, since I am a native of the state, I will be sorely tempted to stuff you full of fun facts like, did you know that clogging is the state folk dance? Or, have you ever heard the expression that North Carolina is a vale of humility between two mountains of conceit? Instead, this series is going to treat North Carolina as a laboratory so that we can better understand these larger historical trends in a particular context. We'll see how certain ideas that seem particular to our moment, like merit pay or high-stakes testing, are in many ways zombie policies that keep returning time and time again. Along the way, I'll try to point out what's particular about North Carolina and what's not. And although the state is not exactly Middletown, it does exemplify most of the major trends in U.S. educational history. For instance, in the 19th century, North Carolina was the only southern state to adopt a common school system, like the ones we see in Massachusetts or in the Midwest. And we'll compare how North Carolina is similar to and different from other states in the Union. In many ways, North Carolina's educational progress has been herky-jerky, like it's operating with a finicky engine that explodes forward and then stalls out while everybody else creeps up and passes it by. Or to situate this more in a NASCAR metaphor, which is, after all, one of our state pastimes, the North Carolina zooms out to a lead and then takes a really, really long pit stop. North Carolina is a great laboratory for understanding the racial inequalities we have in the American educational system and how we have and have not tried to solve them. We'll explore how, at the turn of the 20th century, Governor Charles Aycock, the state's first educational governor, helped establish both universal schooling and Jim Crow disenfranchisement. We'll see how, during that period, some communities developed not only a dual educational system for whites and blacks, but a triple educational system for American Indians. We'll see how African American organizations championed equalized conditions for black schools and black teachers, and later pursued integration and the end of the racially distinct school system. The civil rights movement gave us some of the most integrated schools in the country, at least for a time. As we get closer to the present, we'll learn about resegregation and the fragmentation of the North Carolina public school system, as well as how new immigrant groups to North Carolina, particularly Latinos but also Asian Americans, have helped change the educational landscape here. North Carolina is also a state where we can see how policymakers tried to use education to create a new economy. After World War II, North Carolina was stuck in this sinkhole. It had the most southern manufacturing jobs, and yet it also had the lowest pay for that work. It had one foot in farming and it had one foot in industry. These reformers saw education as critical for creating this new economy, for moving away from the big three, tobacco, furniture, and textiles, to what we have today, a big five of chemical products, technology, auto parts, banking, and food processing. A lot of these economic changes are tied up with higher education, and North Carolina provides insight into the strengths and limitations of our post-secondary education system. We'll take a look at North Carolina's system in order to better understand contemporary debates about higher education access and quality. In many ways, North Carolina was a pioneer in higher education. Its state university, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, was the first public institution to open its doors to students, and yet it also was not funded by its legislature for almost a century. Flash forward to the 1960s, and North Carolina created a community college system that was in many ways exemplary for the South. It created an open door, in the language of its champions, for those without the option of university. The state harnessed this community college system for its industrial recruitment game. It could tailor technical programs there for relocating businesses, a carrot to help lure them down south. But it wasn't just the community colleges. The state's universities also got in on this game, and we'll see how their mission has shifted over the last few decades, such that they are now central to healthcare and economic development. That's a lot of promises. Let's dig in.